Well, I considered this a good evening to come out here on the porch to carve a little bit and do a video. I tell you, I've been having kind of a tiring week. I've been on fall break. This is my Friday of my fall break. Go back to work on Monday, and just a few things I wanted to get on to say. And I'll tell you all that there's just little anxieties going on tonight. I tell y'all that this morning I drove out to Frankfurt to pick something up because when I went down there to add more pieces to my setup, I left the boxes down there that I'd carried stuff in, which also had some of my business cards and price tags in it, so had to go back down and pick that up. Long story as to why it was that way, but took care of that. Would say I might have gotten a little bit tired or a little exhausted just from having taken the trip, but still managed to kind of get through it all right. And the thing I thought I'd come on today is to tell you all some little things about these nativity pieces I'm getting ready to work on. Like, there's a couple pieces here which, given their shape, they could be made into donkeys. They were like little leftover scraps. I kind of had some pieces here which, given the way that the original pieces of wood were left over, I cut off parts to make these triangles at the end and decided that I could kind of make a trio of wise men this way with little kind of poplar, Kentucky coffee tree, and walnut guys. And there's been other things where I've worked along the way. Some of the first things I came up with were with these certain pieces of sassafras I had. I had pieces that came out in a shape where I could easily make Mary from the short pieces and Joseph from the tall pieces, but I did all this measuring out to make sure that I kind of got the right measurements for everything and kind of get them to where they would be in good measurement for what they're supposed to be. And also these little pieces of the same piece of sassafras I cut out to make little special mangers for baby Jesus. And then it comes down to what I cut out more recently. I had these pieces where they were originally shaped in a way where I had to make a cut along here and make these two cuts to kind of make it where it would be like some ears and face for a llama. But then it came down to where I decided to cut this little part out under here to kind of make the underside for the legs. And that little piece I cut out from underneath ended up becoming a good piece to put on top and maybe make the two humps for a camel, or maybe like the two humps with just a little groove in between them like that. I wanted its underside to hang low, so that was why I cut everything that way. But we're gonna try to show a little thing today as far as just how we're going to carve things. Do want to tell you all that this is an evening. My brother is in urgent care. We don't know how sick he is. Don't care to go into much detail about that. But, we don't know where he's going to be next, ER, intensive care, or what. But don't ask anything. I don't care to answer it. And I will say that my niece is here with her mother, and they are inside the house. They might come out here to play down here on the driveway where they usually do. And if they do, you can disregard the noise because they're just, having a good time with her. That's doing what she does. And she might even come up to the video and make a little interruption, say, Uncle Jonathan, but it's all going to be okay. You know, we're just kind of happy she's here. She wants to be here. So that's what I have to say for now. And we're kind of going to do a thing where I'm going to start out to demonstrate some lines we're going to draw. Think that probably should have brought along a ruler to kind of get our dimensions right, and disregard those dogs next door. They're barking a lot too, but I say that we're going to kind of make a square face here, kind of use the measurement of the other block to make it, and so kind of put it in here just like this. And there's going to come the moment where we might even do a little line to go to the top to make the top of Mary's shawl at the top of her robe. And we got little lines we draw in to make that. I couldn't measure them because I didn't bring out a ruler, but this is just my own creative thing. This isn't a pattern I'm going by. I just sometimes come up with little ideas off the top of my head for things, and that's kind of what we've done here. Come up with this way to make her face, and perhaps I'd say kind of draw a little angled line along here, make it so it's going to be where she's going to have a little time in her life where this little place is going to come along, and perhaps also kind of make it where there's another angle along here in similar places, and this is where we've drawn the angles out. I think we're going to take some little angles and put them into her here on this other side, and we won't worry too much about this being an even thing because there's just little work that we all have to do in this. So, we kind of came out with the same little angles and lines here. We might even just draw some places on here for hands, but maybe do that later. I think at this point we're going to kind of make these little lines here, try to cut them out of the wood, and see how this is going to be a good square for a good face, and perhaps make little V cuts along these little lines as well. And as for how she's going to turn out, it'll be better in every way. Hope I get more days I get to come out here and carve more often. Would be nice to have a little more of that. And I tell you, I just needed some cool air tonight. I just needed some fresh air, and that basement can get kind of stuffy sometimes, so it kind of did me a little good just to kind of come out here to carve on the front porch, show you all a little bit more of what I can do. And finally, we make these lines come along like this. I say there's little places where we're going to come in and show her face a little more, cut the face along the edges to make it so it's going to be a little rounder in ways, make it so she's going to see better things that we can make of her. And finally, I think we're going to make one more little line along here and come into these little spots to kind of remove the wood from the edge. And I'd say I might even take all the time I need to for this video. It might be coming out a little more long, but I'd be happy to just take my time with it. Make it as long as I can just to kind of get my relaxation and get to feeling better and get my mind at ease. So, you know, a lot of strange things can happen in life, so we just kind of got to keep it where we can be at rest with all we have. I decided here, cut a couple lines down here to make a little color for her. And there's where the little fashion comes along, makes it so we see this is what she's going to be like when we get done in the end. I say, happy we'll be, happy we will be. Oh, the little livelihood we have and the things that show it. Over at Forks Elkhorn Baptist Church, there's an event coming up in a couple weeks. I'm going to be vending in as one of the vendors. As you see, I kind of worked a little ways along this, come out removing a little extra wood as I need to, finally come out. This is how she did these little ways. Believe I'm going to take the same little steps along this other one too, and sometimes whenever it comes to making these videos, it always does a little good to carve two pieces at a time or two at a time of one piece. And you know, this is just one of those things where with all the extra scraps I had, I was able to come up with so much more. There's so much I kind of learned from the internet these days, and I tell y'all, with how it is that I've been advertising all this stuff on my Facebook and my Instagram, you know, I just would like to tell you all that I have just been surprised by just all the likes I've been getting on my posts, by some of the additional follows I've been getting. I mean, and have just kind of gotten more people to follow my pages on Facebook and Instagram, and with this video being on YouTube, I'd say that I'd be happy if many more of you all who are watching, if you haven't clicked the subscribe button yet, that you would do so. I'd like to have more subscribers on this page, but you know, if you know me, you know that sometimes I like to get on here and talk about random things and preach about Jesus. And I mean, I can always just be happy at the same time just to have as many subscribers as would be willing to come on here and just let me be myself. That's kind of what I do. And I've always heard that when you kind of do little channels on the internet, that's just what you really have to do, is you just have to be yourself to be happy, because the reality is you can't make everybody happy, and everybody can't have the same number of followers, everybody can't have the same number of subscribers. So if you do subscribe, I'd like for you to do it just because my videos interest you. Don't do it for me, do it for you. So that's how I say that this shall come along. I've made little good advertisements in places, and will say that lately I've gotten to where I might even post an Instagram story now and then if I have enough to say, or enough that I need to say or want to say, just to kind of get it all on video for everybody and see what everybody wants to say in response. You all have noticed on my Instagram I do not take message requests, and there's just a lot of reason for that. I mean, I'd say the thing of it is that I'm a happy single man. I'm happy as single man until I believe I find the right person, and when I find the right person, I will know it. I'm not going to take any meddling or anything else from anybody who thinks they know the right person for me when I know I haven't found them yet. So that's one thing I'm going to say about it. And second of all, I do want to mention the fact that sometimes I just have these people even with fake profiles that come on there. I mean, I don't know who the people are, but if nothing else, they come on there as these women who are young and say they're looking for older men and want relationships and all, and probably deny that they want any money from me, which often they do deny. But thing is, I'm not on the internet for that, and the fact that I just can't take it is why I'm not taking message requests. Even had my profile private for a while just because I just kind of didn't want anybody following me who was just going to be on there trying to hook me up or get money or anything like that, and giving me all this age is just a number business, because I'm not there for that. I get on there to begin with to talk to friends who I don't have on other social media platforms, and lately just decided that since I was using my Meta Business site to kind of speak to my friends through my Facebook page, since it will let you do a whole lot more in a message than Instagram itself will. That's one reason I kind of changed it to a business profile, because that's the only way you can do that. That's the only way you can keep it that way. And once it came down to that, I still just decided to keep it set up where there'd be no message requests, because not on there to talk to strangers, not on there to be bothered by anybody who is just out to seek money or relationships or anything like that. It's not what I'm on there for, I say again. So, as you see, we have gotten the face out on Mary on both of these. Believe there's going to be a little moment here where we're going to take another little step and try to put a little work into Joseph's face. I think we're going to do practically the same here. Kind of make the lines by squaring them up with the width of the other piece of wood and make the line along that way. We're going to work along this and try to make so we can get things where, and I think we're going to take Mary again and try to make the top of Joseph's headdress about like the shawl at the top of her robe, in about the same lines of measurement, I say. And this is just when we're working along trying to make things turn out where they will be all for the better. And I say that this is just one of those little lights that shines in our life, tells us all the things we need to know and ought to know. And I say there's going to be a little diagonal line we'll make along the side of the top of the head here. And thinking while I'm at it, might go about halfway down here to make the line for where the beard should be. And think we're going to take it along the same way on this other one as well. And as for how we've got the little line out for the beard, there's probably going to be a little place where we can go take about half the length of that to make the area for the mustache. And with all of that coming right in, we got it where it's going to be a fancy piece of work. We're needing it and calling it to be. Oh, God is good. Good to us all. Even posted a little thing where I was on Instagram not too long ago, and some friend, she made a post asking the question, what are you thankful for? And I commented to it saying John 3:16, that verse that says, for God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. We know that verses have a lot for us to know and to learn, and that's probably one of the most famous verses in all of Scripture, and she kind of played back that answer with a little tune of Amazing Grace playing in the background, and I was just kind of thankful that that message really got out there, and she had a picture in the background that had the words to the verses on it. And I tell you one thing for sure, she was really good about telling little funny stories about broken sandals and things like that. There's just a lot of things to it. She kind of puts it on there to tell her own followers about it, but sometimes with me, I just kind of follow random people just to be kind. I mean, she has a makeup business, I'll tell you that. Of course, makeup and skincare, I mean, you know, she has told me before that sometimes dudes do skincare. She knows some of them, but I don't really do much products like that. I mean, I kind of get special men's products for skincare, the ones my mom buys, and, the ones that are like over the counter from the store and things like that. And she also like sells a lot of makeup and jewelry, women's jewelry, that is. I've worn men's jewelry in my life and probably still have a few pieces of it, but these days, the closest I really come to wearing any more of it is some of those pieces I make. I'm not wearing it right now, but sometimes, and haven't worn it in a lot of places lately, but sometimes have this little cross that I wear that's shaped like that is made out of a mammoth tusk and hangs from a piece of suede lace. I could tell y'all a little bit more about the mammoth tusk to that matter, and it was kind of where I got on eBay and ordered a little box full of mammoth tusk pieces, and that was the one piece I decided to use and engraved across into it with a rotary tool, and have occasionally worn it a few places. Now, as you can see here, we got Joseph's face in, so I kind of got to take this little knife here and kind of make a little bit of a cut along the way. And this is just the kind of thing where I just kind of believe in just trying to demonstrate things little steps at a time, and perhaps even carve the faces first. And I can be out here for quite a while tonight, so there's no telling how long this video could get or might get. And I don't really have anywhere to go tonight. I'm kind of tired and don't really need to be out and about places, so that's why I am on here tonight, just to kind of show what I have and show what I'm doing. And I'd say one thing for sure is I'm just trying not to go out to eat a lot or to spend a lot of money going to coffee shops and things. Trying to just limit my spending a little more because I'll tell y'all what, there is a certain thing online I'm saving for. Sometimes I do that on purpose, you know. Sometimes I avoid going out at times and spending money because there really are things I'd really be interested in buying that can sometimes be the kinds of things that I can afford if I just kind of don't go out and spend a whole lot. And as for me, I can enjoy coming on here to make a little video. And I mean, there's been things I hear all the time. Sometimes, just sometimes, you know, you find out there are people on the internet who might kind of do things for your entertainment or for their living, but they might be people who don't want to be contacted. I've kind of watched a video about that today and about somebody who I just started kind of watching some stuff about, and she kind of talks about how she's been stalked at times because of how things have been with the internet and with people and all. So that's kind of the reason why she kind of moved out of her house and moved into an apartment with security. And that's just kind of the way that we see how things are. And you know, that's sad that some people are like that, but that's how people are. But you know, I've learned by my experiences what kinds of things in life really can make people feel like you're stalking them. So what I do is, if anything, I just pray for God to send angels to their houses, because there's a lot of things angels can do that people can't. You know, there's angels are just strong creatures, and like that angel said in the Christian movie What If, he said to the man, "You do the people work, I do the angel work." So that was what we learned from that experience, and we will kind of certainly learn over time that there's things you just kind of got to trust God for. You know, like one thing I read in a book was where in Bob Yandian's book, You Have a Ministry, it was mentioned there that preachers are men and not angels. So that goes to show you just how human they are, and how there are things you just can't rely on them for, how many things you just can't put them on the pedestal for. Like a pastor who I once had who said to me, you know, I just can't go to God and say, Jonathan has a question, give me an answer, and have it come to us like a snap of a finger. It just doesn't work that way. And that's what I sort of learned about pastors over time. I mean, my father, he's always been one of those pastors, and even he was one who couldn't always do that, to that matter, you know. The fact of the matter is, we just kind of learn in life that we're human, we're not God, we're not angels. We can't do the kind of work they can do, and besides the fact that angels can probably do it a little bit more invisibly than people can, so that's how it works. And by the way, I've got the Amazon delivery person at my door, so I'm going to have to take a moment. Give me a moment. Okay, you can, I guess, just drop that off on the front porch and we'll come get it later. Okay, so that was the Amazon deliverer, so we kind of just had to stop a moment to tell her what to do with the packages, so that wasn't that big a deal. I'd say we kind of got little things taken care of there. Thankfully, it's done, and you know, she was a nice lady. I just told her what to do with the packages. It was probably just something my parents ordered, or maybe something I ordered. I don't order quite as much off of Amazon as I used to, so that's kind of the reason I just had to tell her what to do with it, because my parents are inside and all, so usually they just drop it off if everybody was inside, but we kind of got it taken care of just like that. Thankfully, I was out here and not down in the basement, because sometimes in the basement I get a little bit nervous when the doorbell rings. Never know who it is, never know what they're here to do. My parents always answer it though, and that's the good thing, but you know, I've had times in my life when, whenever I was like sending out care packages to people just to be nice and kind, that sometimes, just for little things it caused, there have been times in my life that the police have been to my door just to kind of check in on and with me about things like that, because one of the times they were here, they just had to tell me, oh, you may have good intentions, but people don't always understand that. I mean, I know they deal with that kind of stuff all the time. They know people have good intentions, but there's just a lot they have to watch out for these days, just to try to keep everyone and everything safe. And like I was saying about who I was talking about a while ago, about somebody who had an apartment with security, it's kind of like that, and how people have to keep themselves safe. And that's one of those things, if I ever know that a person is not going to feel safe if I do something, what I do is I pray for an angel to go over and do it. That's kind of the way I take care of things. And, we also just kind of find out that sometimes when you're just calm and quiet sometimes, and just not getting too close to people or talking to them too much when they have a job to do or something like that, you can probably learn from that experience that eventually they'll notice you, they'll pay attention to you, they'll be your friend if it so interests them. So that's among the things that I've had to learn in life. And thankfully, we've got things to where they're taken care of for the good, and all things considered. Now, I say that we've carved along this way on Joseph, come along with the beard, and you know, I once also read a little story about the Joseph in the Old Testament, and even the fact that he was buried at that place where, right after Jesus died on the cross, the dead resurrected on that hill, right there where Jesus was on the cross. And when that resurrection took place, that was the place where Joseph requested to be buried. And they said that in that same moment he was prophesying to his brothers, and one teacher suggested he was probably prophesying about that particular resurrection because he wanted to take part in it when it took place, and probably the reason why he was buried there, and probably was part of that resurrection that took place there. Anything is possible, you never know. There are some things the Bible's not specific about, but teachers can suggest it in all kinds of ways. So here, I think we're going to take the same little moves, the same little cuts along this Joseph as well, and try to make it so the lines are going to come in really good. There's no telling what kind of time this video could have on it. I am not even sure, to that matter, whether my Amazon Photos account is going to have enough memory to capture all of it, depending on how big it gets. So there's probably going to come a place or two where, after we get done with this Joseph, we might come to a little stopping place, because I don't know what kind of room is on my drive or what kind of space or bandwidth I have. So we're going to have to take things as they come, take things as they go. I'd say I'd probably try not to make this more than maybe about an hour long. Maybe not that long, but not sure. And so this will probably end up maybe being the longest video I've made for YouTube, and so much more to share out of that. But I know for one thing, there's people online who are among my friends. They appreciate the stories I share in Messenger, and I think there's probably even some people who, appreciate these stories I share on YouTube as well. Lot to say, lots to do. I could tell you all about little adventures I have in the little coffee shop today. And this has kind of been the way it's been, I'd say, for over a week now. But at that McLeod's Coffee House, I'd like to mention to you that, first of all, before I tell you anything, I will tell you that we have private restrooms there. The type of restrooms where only one person goes in at a time and you lock the door. That's the kind they have there, and one is men's and one is women's, and the situation has been that the men's restroom has been a little bit stocked up, so men have been having to use the women's. That's what the sign on there tells you to do. Sometimes to me it's felt like a little bit of an awkward situation, but I don't feel awkward about using one in a place that's labeled unisex, which they have in some places now, but sometimes I feel awkward about going into one that is labeled women's. It's like I might do that by accident once in a while when I'm in a place, and if it ever does happen by accident, first thing I will notice as soon as I walk in is there's no urinals on the wall. And if there's no urinals on the wall, that's a sign for me to come out and check the sign. Sure enough, in such a case, when I came out and checked the sign, I discovered that was what happened. So just fixed the matter and went into the men's. That was all I had to do. Thankfully, we get matters like that taken care of when we can. And we know that accidents and blunders happen, you know. And I could tell you a little story about a time when my mom and my aunt were talking as they were walking towards a restroom in a place and accidentally walked into the men's. It was kind of a little blunder situation to them, but it was kind of a thing. And the way we talk about blunders, I tell you all that there's like different churches of different ethnicities and different cultures, and even Baptist churches, missionary Baptist churches like I've been in all my life can be kind of different. But while this hasn't been so much of a rule in Caucasian Baptist churches I grew up in, I know that in Baptist churches that are of African American culture, and that's where most of the congregation is, they have a rule that the only person who goes behind the pulpit is the minister, the man of God. And I'd say one little blunder I made at a time was at the end of a service, we had a guest speaker, and I wanted to talk to the guest preacher, so my little mistake was walking up into the pulpit area, and this was at one of those types of churches. And the pastor said to me, "Jonathan, what are you doing up here?" I said, "I'm sorry." Then he nudged me and said, "Keep on walking." So sent him an email of apology that evening, said, "I just made a blunder. Sorry about that," I said. And this hasn't been the first time I've done it, but probably the first time someone like you saw me so they could ask. And just said, now that I know better, it won't happen again. I see it's disrespectful. And he kind of replied my email telling me, "Good morning, Jonathan, and thank you for your consideration. Don't worry about that. You didn't know that, and sorry nobody told you before, and understand you love the Lord and really respect his house." So we know in some of these churches, it's one of those things where the pulpit area is considered holy ground. Only the man of God stands behind it, and and there's just different verses in the Bible where different ideas can come from. And I can think of a place, something I learned about sometime later, that could very well have been where that came from. It could very well have come from the Old Testament, because we know in the Old Testament that nobody was to touch the Ark of the Covenant except for the priest. And you also were not supposed to carry it on a cart for another thing. You were supposed to be carrying it, walking it, holding on to the poles. And we know that when King David wanted the Ark of the Covenant brought to him, the very mistake that Uzzah and Ahio made was when they put it on a cart to carry it to David. And the thing I say is that putting it on the cart was their first mistake, but what was even worse was that when the oxen stumbled, Uzzah reached out and touched it to try to rescue it, to try to keep it from falling, and he ended up falling dead to the ground because he touched the Ark of the Covenant. And we know, according to what all we see in Scripture, that there were all these things we learn, and one name that's almost similar to Uzzah is Uzziah, and even he again was doing something that he wasn't supposed to be doing because he was the priest. He was actually the king, and he wanted to be the priest, so he went into the temple and burnt incense, which only the priest was supposed to be doing, and the Lord struck him with leprosy. So that was kind of how King Uzziah remained for the rest of his life. I'd say until he got to heaven, he was a leper, so we know that God forgave him, and once he got into the presence of God, he was better again. And above all things, God forgives, and he doesn't take away his grace, he doesn't take away his salvation, but we still face consequences for our sin here on earth. And it's almost like how it was with King David. He committed adultery with Bathsheba and killed her husband Uriah to cover up for it, and God still forgave him, but what ended up happening was his baby that he had by Bathsheba died. And after that baby died, then they had Solomon, and Solomon became the new king after David's death. You kind of see a place at the beginning of First Kings where Bathsheba is taking care of King David as he's getting old in his age, and then you see all the kings that reigned after him, and it's like the book of Kings has both the kings of Judah and the kings of Israel, but the book of Chronicles, the first and second Chronicles, only has the kings of Judah because it was written from a high priest standpoint. And because the high priests wrote it, that was kind of the reason why the high priests were only associated with Judah. So that was why they wrote the articles they wrote. You see places in the books of the kings where it says, and all the other works of this king are recorded in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Jerusalem. And that is exactly what they are referring to. There's times in our lives we see little things, and all the things I learned when I first started studying the Bible, and I still like to talk about it and have to be careful where I do, but I'd say a video is a good place for it. I just wouldn't go into an establishment and do it anymore, because some people were always impressed by how much I knew about the Bible, but then other people were there and just absolutely did not want to hear it. So just a little thought in mind and top thing to take into consideration. Learn about who's receptive and who's not, because that was where I failed. And makes me think of a time years ago when I was at a ministry for the homeless where they had a special church service there, a different guest speaker every week. Preacher got up there and he asked me, how many of you all have ever tried to do something yourself and failed? And I raised my hand. Now this happened before all this other stuff. Unfortunately, the video cut off at 44:52, so I must have been running out of space in my Amazon drive after that, or could only make the video so long or something. I'll have to look into it to find out more, but do just want to kind of let you all know if there was anything I didn't finish talking about in that video at the end, and when I check back over it, I will try to make sure and see that I finish talking about it in the next video. So that's just what I want to let you all know here. Thank you for watching, and take care.